Megan Basham is with us, author of the terrific book, How Evangelical Leaders Traded the Truth for a Leftist Agenda. It's very important. Check it out. Shepherds for Sale by Megan Basham. Megan, first, let's just kind of start off the bat. Some people have been criticizing your wonderful book. What are they saying, and would you like to respond to those criticisms?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, most of what it has come down to is people don't like being quoted on what they said. So you've seen a lot of scrambling to go, well, that's not what I meant. Or even though the entire thrust of my comments were that Christians need to take up the issue of climate change, I didn't really mean that. And hey, I issued this disclaimer at the very end of my presentation, and she did not emphasize the disclaimer. She actually emphasized the bulk of the presentation. So how dare she take us at our word? So most of it has come down to that. And, it's not to be unexpected. I knew that would probably come. It has come. And all I can say is that people do not like to be exposed.
So for the audience that is not yet familiar, just quickly summarize your thesis of the book, and then please name some of the names of the shepherds who prostituted themselves out for cash.
Yeah, so the premise of the book is about how a lot of well-known evangelical leaders and institutions sold out for a leftist agenda for a variety of reasons. One is that they were getting involved with left-wing billionaire-funded organizations. So we're talking about secular atheists like George Soros, guys like Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg. So people who are not Christians were funneling money into these evangelical institutions to push them to the left on a variety of policies like climate change, like lax border policies. They convinced them to take stands against things like Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. So that is one part of it. And then another part of it is how basically to solicit media and favor from the secular elite world, they moderated their stances where the Bible is crystal clear, like issues like transgenderism and what a man and a woman is. One of the people that I highlight in this book is a well-known pastor named J.D. Greear, who was the president of the Southern Baptist Convention for several years, who advocated something called pronoun hospitality. So, he's one of the guys who's not very happy that I have highlighted that, but these are his words. It is what he said. And when I had interviewed him about it at the time, he doubled down on it. So that's really what the book is about. But then another part of it is very important to the election happening right now, because that is about how some of these evangelical leaders, we saw it in 2020, elevated Democratic operatives and suggested that they were sincere Christians seeking to live out their faith in the halls of political power. People like a guy named Michael Ware, who came out of the Obama administration and was an architect of evangelicals for Biden. And they were very successful. You saw organizations like Christianity Today, the Gospel Coalition, really highlighting his work, endorsing him, praising him. So you fast forward to what's happening right now, and they're doing the same thing again with Harris. So at its base, so much of this is politically motivated. And you see these same figures at Christianity Today taking a lot of money from hard left secular foundations to do things like pump political Bible studies into churches and onto Christian college campuses in order to sway the vote to the left.
So yeah, there's just so much there, and you've named some of the names. So these are people that call themselves pastors. It's bad enough that they're embracing left-wing politics, but they're also doing it for cash from the worst people. I mean, the vermin of society that they're not Christians. They actually have really bitterness towards Christianity. First, why are liberal secular activists funding pastors? I think that's an easy question to answer. The harder question is, why are people who call themselves pastors receiving it?
Well, the liberal secular foundations, to give you one example, George Soros's Open Society Foundation, I lay out in the book memos where they explain explicitly why they're doing it. They recognized about 10 years ago that their policy preferences kept continually running into the same roadblock, and that was evangelical voters. They represent roughly 30% of the American electorate. They are overwhelmingly conservative. And guys like Soros realized they were not going to be able to get their agenda advanced if they didn't find a way to deal with those voters. So what they came up with was what you could essentially call AstroTurf campaigns. They started to help fund evangelical front groups and steer money into them so that people that they named evangelical influencers would then subtly take these more left-wing positions publicly. And their hope was that these views, these left-wing views, would then trickle down to the pews and really disarm the strength of that evangelical electorate. So that's why they did it. As to why the pastors have been doing it, well, one, I think they like to curry favor with these elite international power brokers. Suddenly they're in a new class of people. They're hanging out with the WEF. They're being invited to Davos. Those things aren't so surprising that they find that a little bit appealing. And then the other part of it is I do think in some sense, the leadership class is far more liberal than the rank and file anyway. So they were a lot easier to co-opt in this way. And that's why they've been infiltrating them. And I can give you just one example. You said these organizations are in no way Christian. No, they're not. And just one huge example that is really important right now is this group called the After Party. So it's led by David French, New York Times columnist, who says he's a Christian, but as we know, he just endorsed Kamala Harris. And Russell Moore, editor-in-chief at Christianity Today, a confirmed never-Trumper. Well, they developed this political Bible study. They say it's nonpartisan, but all three men behind it are confirmed never-Trumpers, and two of them now are, openly saying, Curtis Chang and David French, that they're voting for Kamala Harris. And so this political Bible study received its funding exclusively from hard left secular foundations like Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors and the Hewlett Foundation. Both of these organizations are the kind of groups that also support ensuring that, and I'm going to use their terminology, that youth have access to gender affirming care. So we understand what that means. They're trying to ensure that kids can be mutilated with puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, surgeries, and they're also rabid abortion proponents. So Hewlett Foundation is the second largest funder of Planned Parenthood in the country. So you have to ask yourself, why would any Christian organization be taking money from people like that? And what they're in turn doing is they have developed this political Bible study. It's going into conservative churches, not left-wing churches, but I am seeing it at unwary, maybe unthinking conservative churches and the Council for Christian Colleges and Universities, which represents 185 member schools, including conservative schools like Azusa and Biola. They have been promoting this on their campuses because
Biola's not conservative, and they haven't been for quite some time. They got Ed Stetzer running their seminary.
But they have that branding, and I think that's what's so confusing to people is they have that branding, and an unwary parent who's not paying attention doesn't realize that they're partnering with these kind of people.
Yeah, I think I actually met David Hogue, who's in charge of the Christian, it's interesting, Council for Christian Universities and Colleges. I'm going to reach out to him because he seemed like a really sweet guy. I don't think he might be aware of that.
And let me just say, there was a change of leadership there, like just in the last couple of months.
Yeah, he's the new guy. So hopefully he shakes it up. Maybe it was part of that. So this is not surprising to me, but for many people in our audience that go to some of these weak churches with these weak pastors, they don't quite understand this. You've done some amazing work exposing it, and they don't like actually learning that, or they don't like that people are learning about their own cash flows and how they're doing this to, get rich while they do things that are super unbiblical. Can you comment on the 50 black pastors that came out in support of Kamala? In addition, Christianity Today pushing Kamala Harris.
Yeah, okay. So as I mentioned, that after-party curriculum, which Christianity Today editor-in-chief Russell Moore helped develop, they are taking that hard left secular funding. And then in addition to that, you suddenly see Christianity Today running articles about how all of these black pastors find Kamala's candidacy so very inspiring. And when you looked at the layout and the article that Christianity Today ran, it was overwhelmingly positive. And this was just in the last couple of weeks. It was a picture of her in a church with pastors looking like a serious Christian, which of course her beliefs would completely undermine that. But that was the portrayal that they had in this image. And the first 2/3 of the article are about how inspiring they find her Christian faith specifically. And at one point, you know, they barely touched on abortion, almost kind of made an excuse for it and then moved on. So when you look at that, and then you know that also this week, the Evangelicals for Harris group just kind of put out their first announcement that they're going to be having a speaking engagement. And one of their speakers is the chairman of the board of Christianity Today, a guy named Claude
where are they having that
Alexander.
speaking? I would love to show up and see if they'll take questions. Maybe I have to look that up. I'm not on
I would say I have to look it up. I don't remember.
I'm not on
now,
their
but-
list, Evangelicals for Harris. I'll look it up in the break.
You're not?
No, I'm not on that one. These people are so disgusting. I'm sorry. Like, again, I'm not one to... What is his name, by the way, the guy that's running it?
Claude Alexander,
Yeah,
chairman of the board of Christianity Today, is one of the Evangelical for Harris speakers.
I'll let everyone make their own determinations on that. Megan, stay right there. Shepherds for Sale. Great work. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Email us, freedom@charliekirk.com. Megan Basham, author of Shepherds for Sale, is with us. So, Megan, if you were to list the chief offenders of people that are doing sinister political advocacy in God's name, which I believe is a violation of thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain, to carry the Lord's name, to do sinister political agendas in the name of God, who would be the chief offenders? Russell Moore, David French?
You know, I feel like David French is so transparently on the left now that it's actually been something of a blessing, because so many of us who were warning about him for so long can now kind of go, you see, and people are like, oh yeah, okay, we see now. Like, it was so bad when he came out and endorsed Kamala Harris last week. But yes, Russell Moore, Christianity Today editor-in-chief, I think he has been a subversive agent for years and years. Danny Akin, people who may not know who he is, but he is the president of one of the largest seminaries in the country, Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. His seminary was heavily involved in pushing CRT, in pushing sort of DEI initiatives. He was also heavily involved in bringing in climate change activism into the largest Protestant denomination in the US, that's the Southern Baptist Convention. So he would be one. I think J.D. Greear is another, and I think part of the reason he's angry is because I sort of detailed his record, and he's trying to say, well, okay, but here's why I did that, because I think people realize that the smoke screen is clearing and people are seeing what's really been going on. So there's this rush to move to the other side of the Overton window, which is the biblical side of the Overton window, now that people are starting to realize, hey, all this stuff we were doing for those years, that was actually not biblical. That was man-made legalism. And I think a lot of people are realizing that now. And, you know, when we talk about what's going on with the election, I hope that someone like you, who has a line into the Trump campaign, is letting them know that they cannot ignore what's happening with evangelicals, because this same really, you have to call it kind of an AstroTurf operation that was run in 2020, where they did this Evangelicals for Biden, and you saw these well-known evangelical leaders and media outlets promoting Joe Biden's supposedly sincere Catholic faith, even though he took all of these stances diametrically opposed to biblical ethics and morality. There's been a lot of analysis showing that just enough evangelical votes in some key swing states moved, and that they may have given Biden the election in those states, or you could at least say get over the cheating margin.
No, I think that's right. And I mean, that's why we did our Believer Summit, and I've been telling the Trump team, and they've been open to it. I think that you can't take the evangelical cohort for granted, because there's so much money that is coming in, and there is this weak, unbiblical Christian agenda that is trying, and you say it perfectly, subvert the word of God, subvert the mission of the church.
Yeah, and it has been going on for years. And I think really just in the last few years have the rank and file gotten to a place where we're not going to be gaslit anymore on the unbiblical politicking that has been going on. And so now that it's being called out, you're seeing a rush to say, no, we didn't do that. But their words are there in black and white. And more than their words, the IRS 990s are there in black and white. You cannot deny that your organizations, your evangelical organizations, if you're at the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, the Evangelical Environmental Network, the Evangelical Immigration Table, the fact that you took money from people like Buddhist eBay founder Pierre Omidyar is in black and white. The fact that you took money from George Soros is in black and white. We know that you are partnering with people who have no interest whatsoever in building up the kingdom of God, and you have been selling out your platforms, your pulpits, and your influence in order to give those people access to your sheep, and there needs to be a reckoning for that.
Megan, people can buy your book, purchase your book. 30 seconds remaining. Final call to action for the audience. Should they continue to go to churches that are led by these types of shepherds?
No, you need to get out of those churches. And by the way, the book is now a New York Times bestseller. So help us keep getting the word out, because that does help. But but you do need to be in church. And I want to say that if you are in one of these churches that has been, where your pastor has been using his pulpit in order to promote progressive politics, no, you absolutely need to get out of those churches, but it doesn't mean stop going to church. Find yourself a faithful church, because the body of Christ needs to be built up with all of us faithfully involved in local congregations. So that's probably my biggest word. Nobody here wants to tear down the church or see people stop going. We need a strong, healthy church in America.
Megan Basham, excellent work. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Email us freedom@charliekirk.com and subscribe to our podcast. Open up your podcast application and type in Charlie Kirk Show and become a member today. It's members.charliekirk.com. That is members.charliekirk.com.